Hi everyone, this time we are having a new video review and we are going to talk about fresh release from Casio. So I have quite nice box here and you can notice that we have a ProTrek logo on the top. So this video will be dedicated to a new series of the ProTrek watches which are aimed at the extreme tourism as well as the bushcrafting. So I would recommend to first take an unboxing look and then we will talk in detail about this watch. So today's watch, as you might have noticed in the name of this video, it is called as a ProTrek PRW-6900, and all other letters and numbers, they hint at the color version of this watch. So there will be several versions available, but today we are going to talk about this black cased watch with orange accents and brown leatherette strap on both ends. So as I said, this watch is aimed at the tourism mainly, so you have a lot of useful things inside. It is quite light, durable, well, these are typical features for the ProTrek series, but I thought it would be worth taking a look at the new release because here we have quite interesting design as well as some minor upgrades to the functionality. So as usual, I would recommend to start with the dial and let's take a closer look together. So the dial size here is 35mm and you have to compare it with the case size, which is 44.8. So I would say this is a reasonably sized watch for average sized wrist. Be careful if you have a thin wrist because it might look huge. But nevertheless, we are talking about the dial here, and as usual, as in the previous ProTrek watches, which we also reviewed on our YouTube channel, you can find it easily. Here we have a multi-layered dial, and it also consists not only of the main, I would say, three-hand sub-assembly, but we also have a digital display here on the bottom, and we have the special sub-dial which shows which feature is used at the moment, and it's quite handy if you accidentally press the button and then trying to understand what is actually happening on the dial. As you might have noticed, we have really huge seconds, minutes and hours hand. Well, seconds is quite thin because it's also used for some other features. We will talk about this in use section, but I think if you have some experience with ProTrek watches, you'll understand what I'm talking about. What is not that great is that the whole dial is covered with mineral glass, and this is kind of strange choice for the adventure watch. I would rather prefer to have the sapphire glass here, especially for this price. And when you hear the price later, you'll understand what I'm talking about. Nevertheless, the legibility of this dial is really great. We have the applied indices on all necessary sides, so even if they're, as you can see here, slightly overlapped with the digital display, they're still present. We have luminous inserts on the minutes, hours and also hour markings, and this is also accompanied with a special backlighting feature, so if you press this button you have a backlighting. And of course the digital display is used in order to show various information, so even in this, let's say, static default time display, you can scroll or rotate the features which you would like to be displayed here, so it even shows you exact GMT time as far as I understand. And another nice or neat feature is that we have the cities written here, so it might be handy for the world timer feature or for setting up the time zone if you are traveling a lot. These are again the classic ProTrek features, which look quite neat here, and if you wonder how the buttons are used, we have also small writings here on the layout. They are somewhat scattered around, so you have to look carefully in order to find them, but I think that's not a problem after you spend one day with this watch. As for the movement, as you can see, of this seconds hand, I wanted to note it separately because we are dealing here with the quartz watch. That's why we have this classic jumping seconds hand, but I think that's not an issue because you understand what you are getting if you would like to have a digital watch with all the cool features inside. And now let's talk about the casing because it's also quite unusual here. I already mentioned the case size, but the watch weight is quite surprising. I mean, when you see this design, you expect something heavy and hefty, but it's only 63 grams. So once you put it on the wrist, you barely notice it, and especially at this size, it is appreciated because, as I said, it's mainly used for the tourism purposes, and that's why it will be easier to wear a lightweight piece than to have something heavy on your wrist. As for the case, we have a plastic here, so that's why actually the whole subassembly is quite so lightweight. And we have this, I would say, typical accents for the ProTrek, so we have screws visible on all sides of this watch. We have really rough texturing here on the buttons, we have really big crown, and of course the bezel is not movable, it's just fixed, but it will be used for the compass feature. As for the crown, it's a screw down crown, so if you want to change the time, you will have to unscrew it first, and then maybe I'll put it in front of microphone. So now you can hear this beep. So it acknowledges that you actually opened the crown, you pulled it out, and you are ready to set up the time. And of course this is quite neat feature because it will help you to avoid any accidental movement of the crown, because now it just sits in place. Note that the crown has only the metal texturing, it's not a metal part, it's a plastic part. The same can be said about these buttons, so two from each side. And also here we have a special sensor which will be used for the barometer feature. Obviously it has to measure air pressure somehow, so it uses this port in order to define the difference. But other than that, we also get a nice combination of the features. So we have a brushed surface on the top, while all these edges, four edges, they have the mirror-like polishing. Of course, we do not have any clear inserts on the rear caseback. As you can see, it's on the ProTrek logo. It's a cover on 4 screws, which is easy to disassemble, even though I don't know why you would do so. And note that this watch actually features tough solar features, so we have a solar movement inside and you don't have to change batteries. And on this note, I think we can talk about the movement inside. So as I said, we have a solar charging here. Water protection is 100 meters, so it's splash proof, but definitely I would not go with this watch for diving. And also here we have a combination of the quartz movement, as you can see, for the seconds hand, but we also have a digital display which is used for various features. And there are plenty of features here because we have a compass, we have barometer, we have also the temperature meter, also we have the classic stuff like a stopwatch, wall timer, also just a timer, and all of this stuff comes in this neat small packaging. As far as I understand, this solar movement should be quite resistant, so that's why it will be handy in an extreme sports watch and also in tourism watch. And as for the power reserve, it has a 6-month claimed power reserve on one solar charge, then you just put it on the light and it recharges again. Obviously it's not a good idea to empty the battery completely because later you'll have any difficulties with the solar charging. So that's why it's always good to have these watches lying on the light and charging themselves. And now I would like to talk about this strap because it's also something unusual for such type of the watch. So let's move on. So while I saw the announce of this watch, I thought this would be a rubber with imitation of the leather structure. Well, nevertheless, this is not the case because as you can see we have nice leather, two-colored leather on both sides. Obviously this is not natural leather, at least it's not written anywhere, and it's still quite flexible, it's easy to bend around the wrist, and it's quite soft textured, so it's very comfortable to use. We also have a nice simple metal buckle here, which is also a nice touch, especially considering that the whole case is plastic. At least here we have a bit of metal. And as I said before, it's easy to replace the strap because we have quick release bars on both ends, so you just scroll it up and you'll be good to go. As for the strap width, it is 24 millimeters, so I would say rather on the big side, but it won't be difficult to find a replacement. If you would like to have a silicone, you might find some aftermarket offerings, even though it would be cool to find some additional strap in the package, but Casio does not provide such things, so you get only one in the box. And now I would like to talk about the in-use experience. So I spent some time with this watch and I have few things to tell you about. First thing I would like to note about this watch is the size and weight correlation, because when you see this watch, as I said before, it is something what you perceive to be really heavy, but when you take in your hands, your brain does not work properly, does not recognize the, let's say, correspondence between the size and the weight. And as I said before, it is actually a good thing, because if you plan to wear this all day, it will be actually easier to wear such watch, which is only 60 grams in weight. And of course the big dial adds to legibility, because in rough conditions it's easier to find these two hands and to check the time. Of course the sound alarms is also good, it might be handy in some conditions. As for the buttons, this rough texturing makes it easy to use not only with the bare fingers but also in the gloves, and the buttons themselves are quite big. They are somewhat stiff, and I would say it's actually a good thing here, because it will prevent all accidental pushings, and the same can be said about this button. Even though it could be a bit bigger, it's used for the backlighting, so if I press it you can see there is one LED, and I would rather prefer a bigger element here so that it will be easier to press, because even with bare fingers you are barely pressing this button in the right area. As for the functionality, I think the functions here are quite diverse, so if you plan to use it as it is designed to be in a bushcrafting, in a tourism, in also some outdoor activities, then all of this stuff will come handy. The compass is very responsive. We also have a barometer here, we have the temperature meter, even though with the temperature meter I was a bit surprised. It shows, for example, here in the room only 29 degrees, what is obviously not true, so maybe it will be better in outside conditions. And also I like the time setting, so this is somewhat useful feature if you travel a lot. If you're changing the time zones, you just unscrew the crown, you set the proper time zone and you're good to go. You do not have to roll it all the way in order to tune the time, and this is a really handy thing. And as far as I remember, this watch has the radio settings for the timing, so in case you're very lazy you can adjust it with help of the radio settings. At the same time, there are a few downturns which are quite surprising to see in the watch for this price. So there is no Bluetooth and you cannot synchronize it with your phone, and it might be actually handy as in the G-Shocks, but I can guess that it was done actually intentionally in order to differentiate the ProTrek series from the G-Shock. So in G-Shock for this price you will get Bluetooth synchronization, in ProTrek for this price you are not getting the Bluetooth synchronization, and for some users it might be actually something to remember, because you won't be able to set up the alarm, for example, from your phone. You won't be able to set up the GPS points, and by the way the GPS is also not included here, which is also a bit surprising, because there are G-Shock watches which offer you a GPS chip inside the watch. Maybe it would influence the size and the price, but I would rather prefer to have another feature in this watch so that it will be even more handy. As for the pricing, so this watch doesn't matter which cover you pick, as you remember there are several of them available, and the watch will be priced at $500 US. So for this price you will get a lot of features. You will get a really lightweight case, you will get a nice design. I wouldn't say that it will be outdated in a few years, you know, it's somewhat classic Japanese design, and it's easy to use. It's quite durable, especially considering that this is plastic, it should survive various beatings. But again, you should consider whether you need various additional features such as Bluetooth and other stuff, because in this case it will be a bit difficult choice, but at the same time it gives you all necessary things such as thermometer, barometer and also compass in the small package. And combine it together with the solar movement, it sounds like an interesting combo to consider, especially if you are not into fancy diver watches or something else. So, of course, this watch you can get it in Helvetia webshop. They have all 3 colors, so you can get them ASAP. And of course I will be happy to hear your opinion about this watch. Do not forget to write it here in the comment section below. And if you like this watch, if you like this video and you would like to support us, press the like button, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and I will see you in the next video review as usual. Thank you for joining me today and bye.